We are back on the Zero Hour. I'm Richard Eskow, RJ Eskow, and our next guest is going to talk to us about a possible presidential run by Senator Bernie Sanders. Cole Stangler is a staff writer with In These Times. Cole, thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to be back.
You bet. Now, your piece on Bernie Sanders, first of all, it was great work. And secondly, I would say that one of the things that distinguished it was you really talked about what you described as the vaguely presidential tinge of the whole affair, the wide-reaching stump speeches and unfamiliar territory, rock star reception. Is Bernie, I guess the two-part question, is Bernie serious about this, and does he have the mojo to make it happen, in your opinion?
Right, so the recent talk is stemming from this interview he gave to John Nichols in The Nation. So it's been something that I think he's been thinking about for a while now. And I think that the trip that you're talking about that I did a piece on in these times was emblematic of that, and that was back in the fall. And I think it's something that's on his mind. The other, I think he's reaching kind of the end of his career in the Senate. He sees a political class that is generally pretty vapid. Even on the Democratic Party is pretty weakened from the time he's been around. And I think, he's concerned about his legacy also. The thing that was interesting, about that trip that he took was, he wasn't raising any money, which is sort of odd for a sitting senator to just travel to a random part of the country and give a bunch of talks in kind of this old school kind of stump speech style. So in many ways, I think you could probably look at that in retrospect now with the interview he gave to Nichols in The Nation, as a kind of, maybe a test to see if he can handle the presidential campaign. And there was another interesting part about that, which I want to highlight, which actually wasn't mentioned in the article, but he actually began that trip to the South. So it was 3 states. So it was Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, I think also South Carolina. So 4 states. And he actually began the road trip at a high school in Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is a really symbolic location. That was the site of some brutal murders in the civil rights movement in 1964. It was also where Ronald Reagan gave this very infamous speech kicking off his presidential campaign, 1980.
At which point a lot of people thought Reagan was giving a coded message to the white racist crowd that they would have a friendly, if tacit, reception in his Republican Party.
Right. Yeah, using language like states' rights. We all know what that means in American political discourse. So in many ways, I think Sanders was trying to kind of combat that, and a lot of the talks that he gave down there were, critical of the mainstream Democratic Party's unwillingness, inability to address class and economic divides, and playing up a lot of cultural, and these social issues. So he's obviously pro-choice, he's pro-gay marriage, but he was critical of how these issues tend to get focused on more than the kind of just core economic issues that unite everybody at the end of the day.
So I read your article a little, in line with that. First of all, I should have pointed out your article was written at the end of October. So in a way, I saw it as a foreshadowing of his comments to Nichols. And when I read it at the time, my feeling was, he's beginning to test the waters by acting presidential, by going out of his home state, by going to places like that. I thought he was making a point that a national campaign, even in what used to be considered the hotbed of conservatism and even racism, that populist issues and socialist-like issues can play well even there. So I thought that was a very tactical move on his part. I also, by the way, want to congratulate you guys for being the only national outlet to cover that trip, as far as I know, because that was an important trip. So when you read, I know he gave the interview with John Nichols. When you read his interview with John, did you see that as a natural progression of the trip you joined him for?
Yeah, no, I think this has been part of, I think it was last summer he, and it's hard, who knows what he's really thinking, but I think it's been part of this, so I should say that the presidential part is one part of it. The other thing which he could have been doing was raising money or trying to identify candidates for his PAC that he has. So that was another part of that trip. And so I think, it was between maybe the presidential run and also just, funding other candidates. But no, when I saw the Nichols interview, it seemed in some respects a progression of that. And I think, the other point that people have brought up is maybe, and I am by no means the right person to speculate about, 2016, who would have thought that I would have thought I'd be doing this. But one thing that people have pointed out is, potentially maybe this is a move to pressure, Elizabeth Warren to maybe go in the race. Who knows if that's true or not? Because Elizabeth Warren, in many respects, would be a better fit running, but they're not the same. So that's one potential angle here.
So what do you think? What are you going to be looking for next? Are you? I don't know if you're planning to cover Bernie Sanders' activities again, or if you have thoughts on what his next move is going to be. But are you staying on this story? And if so, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I'll be staying on it to see if he's making any other bigger moves like this. I think. And it's interesting because in the last couple of years, you look at senators, and Bernie Sanders, it seems like he's almost in preparing to take his, message to the national level. If you look at, just the social media presence he has, there's not another senator, whose stuff you see all over Facebook and Twitter. And in some respect, that's a reflection of just the kind of people that I'm friends with and in the kind of lefty circles. But at the same time, he has this kind of national reach, and his desire to weigh into just a variety of different issues, I think is something that's unmatched. Maybe Elizabeth Warren comes close to it, but so I think you can kind of see the groundwork being laid for it.
Well, so he's looking to build a legacy, I think you're saying, and that's great. Cole Stangler, staff writer within These Times, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And we will be back after this message to talk about more lefty stuff like we do here on the Zero Hour. Please stick with us. I'm Richard Eskow, and we have a very interesting hour ahead. We'll be talking about a lot of things that might surprise you. Come on back.